on Twitter. Um, you can try to keep avenues open with him apart from her, but and not so much. I wouldn't so much focus on original sin as I would upon the positive element, which is the power of grace. Issues related to man's deadness and sin, things
Right.
like that. But if she just slams the door, all you can pray is that door will eventually come open, simply because there's a real weariness with having gone from work salvation system to another work salvation system.
hmm
But yeah, it's a tough situation they're in. No two ways about it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your help, Dr. White.
Okay, thanks, Jeremy. Thanks for your call.
Take care.
All right, God bless.
Bless.
877-753-3341. Let's talk with Danny. Hi, Danny.
Hey, good afternoon, Dr. White. I have a very short question. It's on the fig tree, but don't worry, it's from a Christian perspective. I just wanted to ask how you understand Mark 11:13 without disputing, while still agreeing that it's a physically acted out metaphor of sorts, being that the text seems to say that he wanted to see if there was any fruit on the tree. Should we still interpret this within like a diophysite framework as still referring to the limitations on his human nature? That's just the question.
No, I think that the whole issue of the fig tree, it says he went to see if perhaps he would find anything on it. Jesus obviously knew what the season for figs was. This was a fig tree that had given indication by being in leaf. And the whole point, we have to understand that both Matthew and Mark place this in the same context, and they're communicating the same thing. Everyone understood that the fig tree had relationship to the people of Israel. If you read the parables, remember in Matthew, you're going to have Matthew 23. You're going to have everything that happens as far as in the temple precincts. It seems very, very clear that what is being communicated is this is a symbol for the people of Israel, and it looks like something that it is not. And so I think trying to read anything more into it and going, oh, Jesus really wanted to eat figs, and he didn't get any, and that was just the limitation of his knowledge or anything like that. I think both Matthew and Mark would sort of look at you and go, you're overreading me a bit, brother. Just look at the whole message and you'll get it, type of a thing. I think is what both of them would say at that point. So I just don't see any reason to go beyond that because of the application it's made.
Okay. May I ask one really quick question?
Sure.
It's the question about the Trinity, being that William Lane Craig in his writings, he's adamant about how the three persons within the Trinity none of them are individually identical to God. I was just curious what your position on that is. Would you say that each person is identical to the one God, or would you take a position like his? And that's all.
Well, I'm not even sure what that's supposed to mean. Identical to the one God. You mean the being of God? I mean that. I see a fundamental misapprehension of the distinction between being and person in the question.
Well, Dr. Craig's position would be that, so you have one God that comprises three persons, and I guess he would take the position, it comes up in his philosophical foundations for a Christian world, where, for example, he doesn't say explicitly this, but, for example, no single person is tripersonal, so then if there's an attribute that God has that no individual person has, and therefore he's adamant that no individual person is logically identical to the one God that comprises the three persons. I'm just curious where you stand on that.
I don't understand the statement, so I can't really comment on it.
Okay.
I really don't. I mean, the being of God and the persons of God. Look, I have criticized the good Dr. Craig when he used the example of Kerberos for the Trinity in a debate with a Muslim. I'm just like, excuse me? That is just a wildly inaccurate analogy. And so I've voiced some concerns, and I've forgotten the specifics of it right now because I've not spent much time with it. But I also think that he has a rather unique Christological issue that I've forgotten what it is, but that he takes a rather unusual Christological stance on certain things. So maybe that has something to do with what he's insisting on there. I really don't know.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right. God bless. Bye-bye. 877-753-3341. I bet you're not writing any of these down, so I'm not even going to bother to try to remember them, but that's okay. Let's go to Waco, Texas. Hi, Kenneth.
Hi, Dr. White. Thank you for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
I was calling in hopes of perhaps getting just some pointers or resource recommendations. I've spent most of my adult life as a Christian involved with more secularist environments, particularly those in academia. And you spend enough time in that, and you start to learn the hot issues that come up, but also, most importantly, the foundational presuppositions and worldview issues. Rather recently, I've kind of been transplanted more into an environment where I'm surrounded by theological liberalism. And I'm kind of rushing to catch up on things like attacks against inerrancy, against the doctrine of hell, and things like that. But I'm having a lot of trouble addressing some of the more foundational presuppositions that go into that. I'm wondering if, like we would see with dealing with atheists and agnostics, if you had any recommendations on what I ought to be reading if I'm surrounded by theological liberals at this time.
Well, a number of things. It's older, but it's foundational. Machen's Christianity and Liberalism, his book on the virgin birth, both of them coming out of that time period where some of the best minds in the Christian faith were interacting with classical liberalism. In my experience, theological liberalism today has become more like the same kind of cultural leftism, where it's not so much liberal in the sense of allowing for multiple perspectives. It's adopted the same kind of totalitarian perspective to where if you're in most liberal seminaries today, you're not even going to hear what the old maybe traditional or conservative perspective is on almost any issue. It's just going to be dismissed as, well, yeah, people used to believe that, but we all know that they thought that the Bible was inerrant too, and so they thought you could actually believe these things, and it's just sort of dismissed. That certainly was my experience, even back in the 80s at Fuller, my perspective wasn't really given any opportunity of expression.